I'm not sure, but I think I have a spirit guide that doesn't like to show his face to me. Hi, I'm Aja, and this is my channel, The Weather in Space, where I talk about the spiritual and the paranormal, and these are my life experiences. And I say that I can't be sure because, I'm not a psychic. I don't channel anybody. I'm not an empath. These are just my life experiences. And if they're not my life experiences, well, then they're conclusions that I've come to based on other people's life experiences, the books I've read, and also listening to people who are psychics and who do channel people. These stories aren't going to be in order because the first one that happened is like a long story. So I'm saving that till the end. So the first story took place when I was in my early 30s. I had moved away from home because I was fired from my job, had a really bad breakup with my boyfriend, and I don't know, these people came along offering me a job that was paying like really well. It was just hundreds of miles away from home, and I took it because I was like, am I waiting around here for? Like, what am I doing? I had read a bunch of books on spirituality, but it was at this time that I realized that there were like spiritual channels on like YouTube that you could watch. And I was doing meditation specifically to try to communicate better with my spirit guides. I think what happened was I had an out-of-body experience because I went to bed and then I woke up and I was at home, like home. And I'm walking through my dark house when all of a sudden this woman comes down the stairs and she was like this little petite Latina woman. And when I say she was petite, I mean she was petite because I'm only 5'1" and she was noticeably shorter than me. So she was petite. And she's just kind of like, hey, all right, come on, come with me, let's go. And she walks me to the front porch, and outside there's like another person standing on the porch, but she's like this really young, like she's like a teenager, and she's got like a little clipboard in her hand, and she's got like this big smile. She was like the cutest little thing. And we all kind of start walking like around my old neighborhood. And while we're walking, I'm like, what's going on? Are you guys my spirit guides? And then, like, the Latina woman, she starts talking. She's like, yes, my name is, and then she gives like this chemical formula. And I'm thinking, like, okay, wait a minute, I know this. I'm like, okay, you got a couple of hydrogens and an oxygen. And then she just stops me and she's like, hey, air and water. And then I look to the other one and I ask her, and I'm like, and what's your name? But I didn't really she didn't really tell me her name. It's more like I got a feeling about her, and the word prize came to mind. So I'm like, okay, she must be prize. Because they're my spirit guides and they know more about the universe and about life than I do, I wanted to ask about like love and relationships because, like I said, I had just broken up with someone, and air and water was like, psh, relationships are whack. Forget about them. Kind of like, what are you asking me about relationships for? We have more important things to talk about right now. And as we're walking, I kind of become aware of this other person that's with us. So I would look behind me and I would see this tall, kind of glowing, like human-shaped person who's kind of walking with us. And I got the feeling it was a male. And he never talked, he never interacted. It's more like he was just there kind of watching or overseeing what was going on because air and water did most of the talking. And it's almost like he was her supervisor or something like that. But as it was coming to an end, we walked back to my house, and air and water, she didn't say it exactly, but she said something to the effect of, okay, so you reached out to us, you wanted to know who we are, and here we are. It was nice to like meet you. And I'm thinking the same, like it was nice to meet you too. I was like thanking them profusely, and that other third figure just kind of like came and went. And then I woke up and I was back at my apartment. And the second story happened much more recently. This happened just like last year or something like that. And this was definitely a dream. And I dreamt that I was like this little girl, like maybe I was like 6 or 7 years old. And it felt like I was in like the turn of the 20th century England or something like that. And I'm walking around like this busy city street. There are like people everywhere. And because there are so many people, we're walking around and like I lose my parents. So now I'm like this little girl and I'm in the middle of this big city with all these people around, and I'm all by myself, and I'm scared and I'm starting to panic. And as I'm frantically looking around for my parents, like this man steps out from the crowd. and he was wearing an overcoat, like a top hat. He had a cane. He looked like an older man, but he had a scarf that was wrapped all the way around his face so that I could only see his eyes. But he comes up to me and he's kind of like, don't worry, you're safe with me. And then he kind of like lifts me up and puts me on his shoulder, like the way like, a dad might carry his kid on his shoulders. And we're kind of like walking around town. And it's not like we're trying to find my parents anymore. It's more like he's just there to comfort me. And at this point, the dream seemed to just kind of melt away. And it seemed like it was just the two of us. And while I was with him, I felt an incredible sense of warmth. I felt an incredible sense of security. Everything about being with him just felt very good. It felt extremely reassuring. And I feel like it was almost like he showed up in the middle of this really stressful dream to kind of like calm me down. And that's pretty much where that ended. That was the second story. But this last story took place when I was either in college or I had just gotten home from college, something like that. And it had like multiple parts to it. So the first part was definitely a dream. It was a dream because I was in high school. It wasn't my high school. It was just like some random high school. And I noticed that there was this group of kids that were kind of odd. They just kind of like kept to themselves. And they were kind of strange. And then one day after school, like I followed them. And I followed them into like the woods. And I noticed that they had all gathered around like this body of water. And it's like they had put these pipes into the water. And the water kind of was like glowing. It was kind of misty or something like that. I don't know. It was weird. But that's when I woke up. And it was just my normal, regular bedroom. Everything was normal except... Now, I had heard people who've had out-of-body experiences explain it like they could see, but their eyes were still closed, like they were seeing through their eyelids. And that's what I felt. I felt like I was looking around my room through closed eyelids. So my bed sits next to a window, and right below my window is the deck. And I heard voices coming from the deck down below. And I'm curious, but the thing about these voices is they sounded like tinny or metallic, like they sounded like robot voices. So I lean over on my bed and I go to open my blinds. And just before I do, I hear those voices say something like,
"She's listening. We have to take this conversation elsewhere."
Like, how dare I eavesdrop on their conversation? It was odd. And just as that was happening, I noticed somebody was standing in my doorway. And if I'm going to be completely honest, if I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys, he looked like Spider-Man. Like he was wearing this gray, or rather like silver metallic suit instead of like the regular like red and blue, but he looked like Spider-Man. And he held out his hand and he was like, "Come with me." And I don't really even remember taking his hand. It's just the next thing I knew, we were like flying through like outer space and he's like right next to me. And when he talked to me, it's like he was right in my ear, like right next to it. Like he was so close that when he spoke, I could feel the material of his mask like on my skin. And when he held my hand, I could feel the material like of his glove. I remember it felt kind of rough. But when he was talking to me, he said, "Those kids in your dream, do you want to know what it was they were doing?" And we turned around, so like behind us, I can see the earth, like from above. And then I can see into the earth, like I can see what's underneath, like the surface. And there's all these pipes. It just looks like a bunch of plumbing going like all throughout the earth. And in one of those pipes, I can see there's a clog. And Spider-Man says, "Do you see that clog right there?" He's like, "That's what they're trying to fix." He was essentially saying that there was something wrong with the water on Earth, and these kids are trying to fix it. They're trying to clean it. And, well, I guess that part of the experience was over because next thing I knew, we were back in my bedroom. I was kind of like laying in my bed, but I was sitting up looking at him, and he was sitting at the foot of my bed. And it was almost kind of like he was like, "Okay, well, now that I showed you this, now that I'm here, is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to ask me?" And one thing that I've noticed about my dreams, when information is being given to me in my dreams, it makes perfect sense while I'm there, but then I wake up and I can't remember anything. It's so frustrating. And of course I did. I had like a million questions for him. Like at first I thought he was like an alien because like at the time I had been reading like a lot of Whitley Strieber's books and I've been listening to his podcast. So that was like on my mind. So I'm asking him all these questions as if he's an alien. Like, are you a biological being or are you some kind of cybernetic kind of hybrid being? Where do you come from? What's it like there? Da da da. And of course, he was answering my questions. He was answering my questions very patiently. But as I'm sitting there talking to him, I'm kind of realizing, like, no, I don't think he is an alien because he feels much more familiar to me. And it's interesting because I felt like I had known him forever, for hundreds of years. Yes, hundreds. I compare this to my older brother. My older brother, I've literally known all of my life. And we were close. When we were young, we were pretty close. I felt like this being that visited me, we knew each other like 100 times better than that. As I'm sitting there talking to him, like inside my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I know you. But I don't know from where and I don't know what to do about it. But I'm like, I know you. And it's crazy kind of like thinking about it now. How could there be this being that I feel so close to, that I feel like I know, and I'm not trying to talk to him every day? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's crazy how we get so wrapped up in our lives that like we forget that like there's this amazing thing that just happened to us or these amazing resources that we have that we just kind of take for granted. It's kind of like having a cell phone because in your hand you have access to all of the knowledge of all of the world up until that point in time. And what do we do with it? We watch cat videos. But anyway, we're sitting there and I'm asking him all these questions. He's being very patient with me. But then it feels like it's starting to wrap up. He kind of encourages me to lay back in my bed and he gives me a pat on the head. And once again, I can feel him right up against my ear whispering to me. And he was like, you know, I have to go, but don't worry, you did good. And it's almost like this is the part that's kind of interesting because I didn't ever really feel like I woke up. It never felt like I was waking up from a dream. It felt like I was laying in bed, and because I knew he was leaving, I was laying in bed with my eyes closed, waiting for a good time to open them. Kind of like making sure he's actually gone before I opened my eyes and kind of like went about my day. And once again, I think it's so odd that I had this experience and like I feel like I actually have this being, this person like on my side, like as part of my soul team or whatever. And I never think to like talk to him. Like I just get so caught up on like, oh, I gotta pay this bill and is my cat sick and oh my God, it's winter. How much is my gas bill gonna be like this month? And it's like, I forget these things. I first got introduced to spirituality back in college, and that was like in 2000. So it's literally been like 26 years. What am I doing? Why am I not manifesting? Like why am I sitting here worrying about if somebody's gonna leave a nasty comment on my YouTube videos? Like what am I doing? What am I doing with my life?